Good evening and welcome to my office as I want to talk about me, myself, and I, and the cult of self. If you are one who is wondering as to why your world seems to have plunged into depravity and lost its collective civil balance, look no further than the love of self. Chris Hedges, in his Empire of Illusion, actually frames this as a cult, stating that this cult has within it the classic traits of psychopaths: superficial charm, grandiosity, and self-importance, a need for constant stimulation, a penchant for lying, deception, and manipulation, and the inability to feel remorse or guilt. Yet another has described this as an ethos that aims to gratify one's individual desire to the exclusion of all else. There is, of course, no actual cult of the self, yet consider the self's ubiquitous presence and powerful influence. This ethos, as described, is not due to formal creeds, nor derived from logical thought, but is only the residual de-evolution of civilized principle and established order. It is where the former pursuit of shared virtues has collapsed and given up under the weight of the failure to achieve a truly civilized, stable world. This cataclysmic reversal in civility, meaning, and order has driven the human soul further into loving itself, to find and preserve some residual sense of well-being at the expense of all others. The Apostle Paul refers to this condition in 2 Timothy 3, where being lovers of self accelerates and heads the list of incivilities, epitomizing the tragic condition of the human soul when alienated from the light of divine truth. Jesus once said, "If your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness?" In this suffocating existence, the soul has no choice but to retreat in its dark crevices in the desperate attempt to create a shelter for identity, feigned sovereignty, and good feelings. Paradoxically, in this pursuit of preserving the self, one actually is loving oneself to death. And this is where me, myself, and I is driven further away from the fellowship of community and further into the impenetrable darkness of the soul. When society retreats into this darkness, it can no longer trust in order to achieve community, for it cannot see through its own darkness. As a result of this blinding, society can only ignore truth by defaulting to whatever works for me, myself, and I. Logic and meaning are now only disposable tools that tweak good feelings, often at the cost of holding contradictory ideas simultaneously. It is to merely swipe as one would with an iPhone from one subject to the next, without the need for a connecting narrative. It is to grasp truth one moment, yet oscillate toward its opposite the next. It is to hate and demonstrate against patriarchy and traditional values, while supporting Islamic terrorists who are both patriarchal and holding to a set of values that, incidentally, would make them their worst enemy. How great is this darkness? The cult of self cannot create nor sustain a civil society, for it cannot provide a foundation of love for family. It cannot provide and sustain a basis for knowledge, scientific or otherwise. It cannot sustain a common moral values, maintain peace, nor can it convey what the self craves above all else: freedom and life itself. As to this impenetrable darkness of the self, Jesus stated the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. A healthy eye sees what is actually there and sees it clearly. In the opening of his gospel, John wrote, "In him was life, and the life was the light of men. It is clear that to see Christ clearly is to experience release from the imprisonment of self, the reviving of eternal life, a restored reason that can be fixed on absolute truth, and a securing love of one's Creator and Sustainer. Because He rescues us from the imprisonment of self and its desperation, He unites one death grip of loving self toward loving others. No wonder the Apostle Paul wrote, "He has delivered us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of His beloved Son." Tragically, the soul that persists towards itself will eventually be left entirely to itself for all eternity, while in the agony of passion and anger, hatred and rebellion that has no alternative but to continue driving itself deeper and deeper into an eternal night, where the worm does not die and the fire is not quenched. God's answer to the cult of self is the Son of God, who rescues us from the curse and provides abundant life for all who respond to His offer of salvation through faith in the one who is life Himself. And thank you for listening. May God bless.